Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. A late-night coffee run has left a teenager scared to leave the house after dark. We speak with the 15-year-old boy and his mother. Plus, potential plans for a road diet on Wyandotte Street East is now off the table. An active transit advocate weighs in, and an unlikely visitor takes a dip in a local pool. We share with you that shocking footage and how staff were able to get it out. A Windsor teen is speaking out after being robbed by Knifepoint. I sat down with him and his mother at a local park to hear his distressing story. What started as a late-night coffee run left a 15-year-old Windsor teen scared and helpless. Shortly after 10 p.m. on a Sunday earlier this month, a 15-year-old was leaving the Tim Hortons on Wyandotte Street East and Marintet Avenue. He says there was a small group of people standing outside. CBC is not naming the teen because of his age.
And they threatened to stab me with a knife, so I biked away really fast. And my phone fell right out of my pocket, so I went to pick it up, and they caught up to me.
Two men wearing ski masks stole the phone and the $20 in his wallet.
I actually cried for like a whole hour. I was angry and scared and sad at the same time. I don't know how to describe it.
His mother says he was in hysterics when he returned home, and they immediately called the cops.
Especially for it to happen to a child, just the only reaction I have for that is mind-blowing.
Windsor police say investigators obtained surveillance video of the incident and were able to identify one of the suspects, also a 15-year-old teen, who was arrested at his home in East Windsor. Horrified by the incident, the victim's mother says the situation speaks to pressing social issues and people feeling desperate.
They're willing to go out and mug a child.
She says since the robbery, she's nervous about her kids being out in the neighborhood. She'd like to move her family to a different area, but housing costs prevent her.
Kind of what it boils down to, are you willing to pay more for your safety, or are you going to move somewhere dangerous because it's affordable? And that's, I don't think, a question anybody should be asking.
Knowing an arrest has been made allows the 15-year-old victim to feel a little safer.
Starting to sort of get better.
But he still doesn't venture out at night, especially after his cell phone was stolen. The family can't afford to replace it. The teen says he used the phone for schoolwork, socializing, and most importantly, communicating with his parents when they're away.
I haven't babysat my siblings because of that reason in a long time. It's kind of like the movies, honestly. I guess it's just shock.
Jameson workers in Windsor are back on strike. That's after an overwhelming majority turned down a tentative agreement. That tentative agreement was reached on Friday and endorsed by the National Union and Local 195 Bargaining Committee. Over the weekend, 76% of the roughly 300 workers voted it down. Unifor previously said members' wages and workload were concerns in the bargaining process. The union says this latest vote shows workers are willing to be on the picket line for as long as it takes. Workers have been on strike since February 1st at the company's Rhodes Drive facility in Windsor. They manufacture and package Jameson health supplements. A former Hotel Dieu Grace Volunteer Association manager has been charged with defrauding the hospital's Volunteer Association. Windsor Police started its investigation a year ago after being notified of a possible fraud. Investigators say they found $62,000 deposited into the suspect's personal bank account. That money was meant to go to the hospital's Volunteer Association. Police say the fraud took place from 2015 to 2020. A 48-year-old woman has been charged with fraud over $5,000. Hotel Dieu says this doesn't impact the hospital, as the association was a separate entity, which the hospital says no longer exists. Councillors clashed over a scrap plan to slim down part of Wyandotte Street. The project was killed during last month's budget meeting, but it could be revived. The CBC's Chris Ensing reports.
The stretch of Wyandotte Street East between Walker and Lozon is hair-raising for some.
A few changes, modifications, it could really make a difference.
They say speeding drivers make the street dangerous. What do you call this intersection?
Oh, the Indy. This is the Wyandotte Indy.
The city has looked at ways to make it safer for years. Some say the perfect solution already proposed, a road diet. City data shows people drive parts of this 7-kilometer stretch faster than the speed limit. 2 years ago, the city held public information sessions on a potential road diet. This is present-day Wyandotte at Paulette. 4 lanes with on-street parking. One alternative, turn one traffic lane into a bike lane in each direction with a parking lane as a barrier to traffic. The city pitched changes like these along the entire stretch to make it safer for cyclists and pedestrians. As an example, the 11-minute morning rush hour commute from Watson Avenue to Devonshire Road would take 19 minutes after those changes. At the end of last month's budget meeting, Windsor's mayor pitched a last-minute change endorsed by council. Spend $225,000 on crosswalks instead of $1.2 million on the road diet. 2 councillors who originally supported the mayor's change clashed over the decision today. Kieran McKenzie regrets his support and that council made a mistake deciding without looking at a report. Joanne Ginac says the city will get a report later this year that will revive the debate.
When we get the report, if this council thinks we should move forward with something, we move forward with it.
Your motion says traffic calming as opposed to road diet.
At this point.
But that's what it says. That's what it said. That's what you brought
At this
forward
point,
that day.
I needed traffic calming right away.
You didn't.
I can't wait.
You didn't need to deal with the other project. You could have got the traffic calming. You could have got the traffic calming without dealing with the road diet.
I knew that I had requested a report, and it's coming.
While council waits on the report, advocates for the road diet say a pilot project should already be in place.
We have been waiting 4 years, 5 years for a pilot road diet through Riverside and through the villages of Paulette.
Road diets are part of Windsor's recently approved Vision Zero plans. It's also happening across the border in Ferndale, where Woodward Avenue has converted one traffic lane in both directions into 2-way bike lanes, with a parking lane acting as a buffer.
I know to suggest that a 2-lane road might send people into paroxysms of, protest. But it's something people could adjust to.
City staff didn't say when exactly its report will return to council, but they'll have it shortly. Chris Hensing, CBC News, Windsor.
A city pitch to add more red light cameras to intersections has been paused. Council says it needs more information before making any changes. 10 red light cameras have resulted in 11,000 tickets, totaling more than $3 million in fines. They were first installed in 2022. City staff said that isn't enough time for an industry standard report on safety or driver behavior changes. Administration says early data shows the number of side impact collisions are down, but that driver behavior hasn't changed. Council has sent the report back to a city committee to ask more questions. The Ontario government confirming today it's giving an extra $1.3 billion over 3 years to colleges and universities. That's even though a panel appointed by the government recommended much more. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has the story.
The Minister of Colleges and Universities announced more money for that sector. Most of the details had already been leaked last week.
The largest, it's a historic investment, $1.3 billion package, new funding to support colleges and universities in this province.
There's also a 3-year tuition freeze for Ontario students. Those schools can charge an extra 5% every year for out-of-province students. Most of the new money, more than $900 million, will go to a sustainability fund for colleges and universities. Of that, $200 million to the schools in greatest need. There's also money for some STEM programs, mental health supports, and building renovations. It's far less than the amount recommended by the province's advisory panel in a report last November. Asked why the government didn't listen to its expert panel, the minister repeated her talking points.
Today I'm announcing $1.3 billion in new spending for post-secondary institutions in Ontario.
Plus, the panel's recommendation came before the federal government capped international student numbers, meaning less money for schools. The minister's response on what she'll do about it probably sounds familiar.
Thank you very much for the question. And again, $1.3 billion.
You're not actually answering the questions, Minister. What are you going to do to make up for the loss of international student revenue?
What I'm doing today is investing $1.3 billion.
The government is also going against the panel by freezing tuition. That part, the opposition parties agree with.
We absolutely support a tuition freeze. Students are suffering from the cost of living crisis.
But that blue ribbon panel report showed Ontario's funding of colleges and universities is far less than other provinces.
Ontario will still be dead last across Canada in terms of the level of per student funding.
The province's universities say the money falls far short.
The money's short term. After 3 years, it disappears. And so we're very concerned that we don't have the predictability. We don't have the certainty of what revenues we have to provide programming for students.
He's hoping for more money in the spring budget. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
LaSalle's Vollmer Complex is a popular place for swimming, even for non-humans. A white-tailed deer creating quite a splash this weekend. CBC's Dawson Chen has more.
Oh my God.
That was the scene in the aquatic center at the Vollmer Culture and Recreation Complex yesterday when a 3 p.m. kids swim session was interrupted by a bouncy deer. The wild animal entered the facility by crashing through a window, then spent the next 15 minutes jumping in and out of the leisure pool. The incident was recorded by a LaSalle father who was there with his son for a toddler swimming lesson.
I realized that it was happening when a bunch of parents and staff started rushing into the changing room areas. I had a staff member say, "Hey, put your phone away. We don't need this on video." And I'm like, dude, if I don't get this on video, like, no one's gonna believe me.
Vollmer staff eventually coaxed the deer out of the pool area. Some Vollmer workers managed to grab the animal by its legs and drag it out of the building. The deer then ran off, seemingly none the worse for wear. The town of LaSalle doesn't have its own animal services. Vollmer's director said the hooved visitor was a first for the complex.
You know, our staff really reacted very quickly and calmly and were able to get the situation under control in a very quick amount of time. This isn't something you can prepare for. It's not something anyone anticipated happening. This was just one of those instances that unfortunately no one could have predicted would happen, but it was handled well, and thankfully no one was injured and the deer was not injured either.
Cleanup and repair efforts were still underway this morning. The aquatic center reopened in the late afternoon. Finaro said she was erring on the side of caution when it came to broken glass and potential water contamination. Pool fouling protocol was followed, and all surfaces and equipment were disinfected. Those experienced in wildlife care say Vollmer staff were fortunate the situation wasn't uglier.
They were very lucky that they did not get hurt, and they were very lucky that they did not hurt the animal as well. They're a high-stress animal. They're big. They've got sharp hooves. They've got long, strong legs. In most cases, when you're dealing with deer, the best advice is move back. Just backing off and allowing it to calm down a little bit and find its own way out.
Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
Beautiful sunset there tonight to finish off a balmy day here in Windsor, Essex. And if you can believe it, temperatures are going up. Your weather forecast after the break. Well, if you got a chance to go outside today, you know how beautiful it was, and our photographer Dax Melmer was out today to capture some of that sunshine. Lots of smiling faces on the playground and no cold, cramped fingers while shooting some hoops in the sun. And of course, runners getting that spring-like run-in. Tomorrow is going to be another warm day with the potential to break a record. The record high is 14.2 degrees. Tomorrow, it could be even a little bit warmer. Victa is here to break that forecast down for us.
Quick look at some Windsor headlines. Well, it was a beautiful day here in the Windsor region, and a quick look at what we're going to be anticipating. Well, we're going to be having some thunder showers to start our Tuesday, and it's also going to be some above seasonal temperatures over the next couple of days. We're expecting a dip closer to Wednesday, as that will bring us some mixed precipitation. But when it comes to warmer days ahead, well, it's going to be well above seasonal. But we are talking about some rain that we're expecting over the region, thunder showers on Tuesday more specifically. We're expecting around 10 millimeters to fall in the Windsor area, 10 in St. Catharines, 4 in Toronto, 8 in Kingston, Ontario. Now, quick look at what we're going to be anticipating from a bird's eye view. Well, as you did anticipate, today, Monday, was a beautiful high pressure system day. Now, as we get in towards your Tuesday, we can see there's going to be some rain passing by. Now, Wednesday's also going to be bringing another bit of rain, as we will take a closer look here. Now, the Chatham and Kent area will be possibly receiving warnings for thunder showers or watches as we do get closer to Tuesday, because that's the one area which we're getting a lot more heavier concentration of severe thunder showers compared to other areas in the Detroit region. Now, the Windsor region, the Detroit-Windsor region. Now, as you do get later on and towards your Wednesday morning, we can still see some more rain will be passing by, but unlike Toronto, who will be expecting some snow to work its way in on Wednesday, we're just going to be having a mainly mix of sun and cloud once that bit of rain passes by on your Wednesday. But taking a quick look at what we're going to be expecting tonight, 9 degrees feels like 6, clear skies behind us. No complaints in this department. Quick look at our 3 and 7 day forecast. Well, above seasonal day on Tuesday and Wednesday, but as you do get closer to your Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, well, we can definitely see that the temperatures will be getting warmer, especially with that 17 degrees that we're expected to come in on Monday. Now, big takeaway for us here is those thunder showers on Tuesday. Don't forget that most important phrase, that if you do hear that thunder roar, make sure you go indoors. Hope you all have yourselves a great night. Over to you.
Thanks so much for that, Victa. A food source for animals is making quite the buzz in the UK. We share with you an idea that might have legs. That's coming up. About 160 tons of Ukrainian grain have been destroyed at a railway station in Poland. Farmers in that country have been protesting over what they see as unfair competition from Ukrainian produce. It's the fourth such incident in recent weeks, and the Ukraine is calling for those involved to be punished. Polish farmers have complained about surpluses caused by cheap imports. The EU waived duties on Ukrainian food imports following Russia's invasion in 2022. Protesting farmers in Poland and other European countries have been blocking border crossings and highways. They're upset with foreign competition, environmental regulations, high costs, and low prices for produce. A coroner's inquest is underway into the death of Miles Sanderson while in police custody. He was arrested in the mass stabbing on the James Smith Cree Nation in Saskatchewan on September 4th, 2022. Sanderson died soon after being arrested following a 3-day manhunt. 11 people were killed on the James Smith Cree Nation and in the neighboring village of Weldon. Sanderson's cause of death has not been released. That's expected to come at the inquest tomorrow. Today, officials from the RCMP and Saskatoon Police are giving evidence. This week-long inquest is separate from one held in January that examined the 2022 rampage. The federal government has introduced a new bill to tackle online abuse. The legislation is meant to protect children from bullying, exploitation, hatred, and violence on the internet. CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian has the details.
The Liberals are clearly hoping to make a statement with this legislation. They had been telegraphing last week, as Parliament was on an off week, that it would be the first piece they presented upon their return, and that's what's now happened. The legislation does propose a lot, chiefly in the goal of reducing harmful content to Canadian internet users, specifically children, minors. And it defines harmful content in 7 different categories. Some of those do focus on children, such as content that sexually victimizes a child. But their categories are broader. Some of them include content that foments hatred. And to enforce all this, the government would create a new regulator, the Digital Safety Commission, think like the CRTC, but for the internet, when it comes to 2 specific categories, content that sexually victimizes a child or intimate content that's shared without someone's consent. The commission would actually have the ability to go to online platforms and tell them you need to take this down within 24 hours.
As someone who represents, as we all do, parents who speak to us all the time about these dangers and how they apprehend and how they watch their children sometimes go through horrible experiences online, I think any responsible government has to act.
This is not the government's first try at acting either. It initially proposed similar legislation before the last election, then promised it would reintroduce it during the campaign, but it took several rounds of consultations with community groups, with experts to get to this point, the NDP pointing to that delay.
They finally announced steps to move forward on online harm. They promised to do so 100 days after the election. Now we're at almost 800 days. Their inaction has meant that kids were harmed, that kids actually were exploited.
The Conservatives, meanwhile, have already said they look at this legislation as Justin Trudeau's latest attack on freedom of expression, and they plan to fight its passing. Rafi Boudjikanian on CBC News, Ottawa.
Air Canada has decided it doesn't have to compensate a passenger for a cell phone it appears to have lost. The passenger misplaced the phone, but it was found and turned into the airline by an Air Canada employee. Carolyn Dunn with CBC's Go Public unit has the story.
I was hoping that my mobile tracker would save me by finding my device.
Olu Awase was trying every trick he knew to help find his lost phone. Last October, the Edmonton man accidentally dropped his 3-month-old pricey Samsung phone before his family boarded a flight from Toronto to Edmonton. Once home, Awase opened a security app called Bitdefender. It alerted him that someone had tried to unlock his phone, and to his surprise, an Air Canada employee in full uniform was staring back at him, or obscuring his identity. At first, Awasei was relieved.
I think I'm in good hands. If it's an employee of an Air Canada that found it, then I'm okay.
Air Canada emailed him to say it had identified the individual in the picture you provided and conducted an interview with them. And the employee and an eyewitness reported the phone was returned to the lost and found area, specifically at the Air Canada customer service desk. After that, the airline lost track of the phone, and that email would be the last time Air Canada would correspond with Awasei. After weeks of online chats and emails with the airline, Awasei is no closer to getting his phone back.
So that made me believe this was a case of a theft.
In a statement to go public, the airline said Air Canada did not have responsibility for this phone, as it is a personal item.
Finders keepers, losers weepers. That's not an accurate summation of the law.
But this civil lawyer says Air Canada is likely liable.
When someone comes into possession of someone else's property and that person's identification is known, they do have obligations to return that property.
Olu Awasei is not giving up. He's lodged a police complaint and hired a lawyer, hoping Air Canada will pony up the approximately $2,000 he owes on his lost phone's contract. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
A UK company is creating a lot of buzz at its farm in central London. It's where the startup is growing insects as sustainable food for farm animals.
It's the fastest growing insect. You can feed it on the widest range of inputs, so anything from animal manure through to food waste. So it is the quickest, cheapest, most sustainable insect to farm, and it's a non-disease, non-pest species that's found all over the world.
The company's research center breeds an army of these protein-rich bugs. The black soldier fly is often mistaken for a wasp, but it neither bites nor stings. Insect protein is seen as a highly sustainable alternative to traditional animal food, which has a much larger carbon footprint. These flies could also potentially help cities by chopping down food waste. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.